is precisely this man, Dvorkin, who serves as the ideological mentor to Kremenovska. Her rhetoric is also closely aligned with that of Racier's vice president, the Russian priest Alexander Novopashin, a vocal promoter of the narrative of neo-Nazism developing in Ukraine. His so-called religious work consists mainly of disseminating Russian propaganda designed to justify armed aggression. There is ample public evidence that Kremenovska is without question an agent of the Russian organization Raciers, which is directly linked to the Russian Federal Security Service, FSB. A comprehensive linguistic analysis of Kremenovska's rhetoric in materials published on her media platform, Vilne Slovo, reveals a consistent overlap in language structures, terminological formulas, and thematic emphasis with those found in Racier's affiliated media resources. This provides a well-founded basis for asserting that her communication strategy is shaped according to the directives of that very Russian entity. Specifically, in strict adherence to Racier's playbook, Kremenovska engages in the systematic discrediting of the same internationally recognized religious and civic organizations targeted by Raciers. She also attacks leading Ukrainian religious scholars and human rights advocates, individuals who played a pivotal role in securing Ukraine's religious independence and in the recognition of the autocephaly of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, OCU. It was she who actively promoted labels such as sect lobbyist and agents of the West to discredit these figures, phrases that mirror the rhetoric of Russian Orthodox Church priest and Racier's vice president, Alexander Novopashin, who used the exact same language to malign these respected religious scholars. Notably, the official website of Novopashin, the missionary department portal of the Novosibirsk diocese, which operates under Raciers, featured a glowing article about Kremenovska. The piece, reprinted from her own website, is written in an unmistakably celebratory tone and virtually lionizes her efforts in the so-called fight against cults, placing her alongside another Russian anti-cultist and vocal proponent of radical Russian propaganda. What is particularly striking is not just the content of the article itself, but the platform on which it was published. The Novopashin website, where Kremenovska is celebrated, is known for its consistent and virulent anti-Ukrainian rhetoric. Notably, it hosts a piece entitled "Ukraine is a Cult," in which Ukrainians are subjected to blatant dehumanization. That such an openly propagandistic and anti-Ukrainian Russian publication could so easily find an ally in a Ukrainian expert like Kremenovska speaks volumes about the true nature of her so-called educational activities in Ukraine. When it comes to the ideological foundation of Irina Kremenovska's work, one revealing example stands out. On the official website of the Center for Economic and Legal Research, which she leads, there is a post announcing a project ostensibly aimed at assisting victims of so-called cults. Yet right there on that page, on the Ukrainian platform, and without any disguise, appears the slogan of Raciers, the Russian organization led by Dvorkin, well known for its ties to the FSB and its active role in Russia's information psychological operations. This is a direct indicator that Kremenovska's ideological and methodological source is, in fact, the Russian agenda. Moreover, a look at the archived version of the antisecta.org website, where Kremenovska served as coordinator and one of its lead contributors, reveals that the site is saturated with quotations from Alexander Dvorkin and links to his articles and books. In the anti-cult fighters section of the site, Kremenovska's Ukrainian Center appears unabashed alongside Racier's resources and figures known for their explicitly anti-Ukrainian stance. Kremenovska's rhetoric concerning the religious group Jehovah's Witnesses is also deeply revealing. Russia remains the only country in the world where this group has been officially designated as extremist and completely banned, a move initiated primarily by Dvorkin and widely condemned by the international community as a blatant violation of human rights and freedom of religion. Yet, Kremenovska, in her articles, praises this ban as a model of effective policy and openly expresses indignation that Ukraine has yet to follow Russia's example on this issue. Her writings on Jehovah's Witnesses include verbatim quotes from Dvorkin's public interviews, which she presents as her own analytical conclusions. Taken together, these elements form a clear picture. Kremenovska's actions do not merely align with the agenda of the Russian security services. They are explicitly grounded in that agenda as their ideological and methodological framework. It is imperative to note that on her own platforms, Kremenovska has openly encouraged Ukrainians to consult Russian websites and bloggers who directly promote an ideology aimed at the destruction of Ukrainian statehood. Her pages contain links to materials from authors who justify Russian aggression, propagate disinformation about Satanism in Ukraine, and call for the so-called denazification of Ukrainians, language that has long since crossed the threshold from the words to war crimes. It is difficult, to say the least, to believe that all this is mere coincidence, and yet it is precisely in such coincidences that the structure of Racier's operations is laid bare. Covert influence, the disguise of public good, and a quiet yet methodical service to the enemy. Another defining trait of Kremenovska is her disturbing and sadistic involvement in dog hunting, a practice that in any civilized country provokes not just condemnation, but outright disgust. Together with a loyal accomplice, she even attempted to give this vile hobby a veneer of respectability by registering a so-called journalist dog hunting association. Presumably, this was meant to lend an air of legitimacy to their nighttime excursions to kill stray dogs. And although she no longer boasts about her exploits as loudly or as frequently, the internet thankfully does not forget. It preserves her own words, her confessions of how she, with sadistic delight, poisoned stray dogs and then comfortably seated by her window listened to their dying howls, which she poetically described as serenades. Forgive me, Schubert, it seems you have a rival. Outraged residents of Kyiv and the surrounding region have repeatedly raised public outcries, demanding an end to this cruelty. Ukrainian media outlets have covered her acts of animal abuse on multiple occasions. And yet, regrettably, Kremenovska continues her grisly pursuits. This may well be explained by the fact that dog hunting, as a phenomenon, also originates in Russia, and her pro-Russian ideological alignment appears to extend to this particularly grotesque form of activism. What is particularly alarming is the role played by Kremenovska in the carefully orchestrated campaign to discredit the АЛЛАТРА international public movement. Once certain circles in Russia realized that АЛЛАТРА was promoting ideas fundamentally at odds with their interest, especially due to its public coverage of the Siberian magma plume threat, Raciers quickly activated an information suppression strategy targeting АЛЛАТРА. As part of the strategy, their agent of influence in Ukraine, Irina Kremenovska, was Dvorkin. Acting on direct orders from Moscow, she began methodically implementing an information warfare campaign aimed at discrediting АЛЛАТРА, parroting word for word the language and rhetoric of the Russian sectarian ideologue Alexander Dvorkin and his Raciers platform, which operates as a direct instrument of the FSB. Kremenovska copied and repeated Dvorkin's slanderous tropes against АЛЛАТРА, totalitarian sect, cult, brainwashing, and fear manipulation. A linguistic analysis easily reveals that her sentence structures, terminology, and rhetorical constructs are identical to those used in Russian propaganda outlets and in Dvorkin's personal style.